Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is up, Headliner Nation? Hopefully everybody is doing well out there today. Your boy Kyle back with our tight end start-sit analysis for Week 10 of the NFL season. Now, last week, mentioned it in the wide receiver video, crazy down performances all across the board, not just from multiple players, but multiple teams. So hopefully you were able to make your way out of it. I've seen a couple of people even say that they almost lost to abandoned teams this past week because their teams performed so poorly. Well, that's unfortunate. I think a lot of people dealt with that this past week, but it's time to look forward. We got to move on to Week 10 and talk about the tight ends. But how was our performance in Week 9? Well, it wasn't too bad. It could have been better. For our accuracy for the tight end position, we went at 65% last week. We hit on a few different players, and then we missed on a few players as well. Unfortunate, but it happens. It happens. A couple of really good calls on Monday Night Football. Had Cole Kmet and Freiermuth both as starts, and we'll talk about them in this video. We won't talk about Kmet, obviously, because Chicago's on a bye, but we'll talk about Freiermuth a little bit more, and then what you need to do to get ready for this position in Week 10. But if you haven't done so yet, you got to get into our drawing for $500 cash money here in November. It is our giveaway for the month of November. Listen, we have got holidays coming up. You're going to have to be buying some gifts, lots of different things. You're going to want a shot at this. It's really easy to get entered into it as well. Maybe you've already done this. If so, you're in it. If not, head over to Prize Picks, either on their website, download the app, doesn't matter. Create a new account, use code word headliners, and deposit $20. You do that, you're entered into the giveaway for some cold hard cash. That's all you got to do. Plus, our Prize Picks have been fire all season long, so you're probably going to make a little money that way as well. But it's time to jump into it. Let's look at our tight ends for this week. And honestly, the first matchup, we're diving headlong into it because it's our Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Our friends over at Manscaped are sponsoring us again this season. So if you're going to be doing any Christmas shopping for that special man in your life, maybe you should head over to manscaped.com, use code word headliners at checkout, get 20% off your entire order and free shipping. Now, why is this my Manscaped must-watch matchup? Because it is two of the better tight ends in the league performance-wise so far this year. And half PPR leagues, you've got Mark Andrews at 2 and Mike Gesicki at number 3. Both of these guys performing very, very well. But not only that, their teams both are not great against opposing tight ends. So this is going to make for a really juicy matchup on Thursday Night Football. I mean, Miami's allowing over 13 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. Mark Andrews has soared all the way to tight end 2 on the season after a slow start. So this is going to be a really, really good matchup for him. And then on the flip side with Mike Gesicki, this is going to be a great matchup for him as well. He's still the tight end 3 on the season. Last week wasn't that great. He's got the he's facing a team that has allowed the second most fantasy points per game to tight end on the season. Now, to begin the year, kind of the argument for Baltimore was, well, they face some really, really good tight ends. But even if you look over the last few weeks, over the last 4 weeks, they're still allowing the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. So any way you look at it, Baltimore has not been that great against tight ends this season. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that this matchup brings us some huge tight end points for Andrews and Gesicki both. Atlanta and Dallas is going to be a lot of fun to watch as well. You've got Kyle Pitts. You've got Dalton Schultz. For Kyle Pitts, I'm going to go Kyle Pitts and Hayden Hurst both this week. Now, Kyle Pitts essentially at this point is a slot receiver, and he's a matchup nightmare for basically everyone, especially if he is going to be going up against Jordan Lewis. Now, if you watch the wide receiver start and sit video, Awesome. You kind of heard my concerns about this game and what they're going to do with Trayvon Diggs. If you haven't listened to that yet, I highly encourage you to go back and do so. Now, with this game here, the question is, do they try to move Diggs into the slot, who's only played 43 snaps there all season, and try to put him up against Kyle Pitts? Or do they let Kyle Pitts run against Jordan Lewis? And quite honestly, I like Jordan Lewis, but I don't think he's going to be able to keep up with Pitts. Now, assuming that doesn't happen, because Diggs, again, has barely played in the slot this season, assuming Dallas just runs with what they've been doing, that means Kyle Pitts is going to have Jordan Lewis. Russell Gage is going to be on the outside with Diggs probably on him. We're going to need to look to the tight ends a little bit more, which is why I'm going to run with Hayden Hurst also as a start. Now, if all this changes and Kyle Pitts is covered by Diggs and we're open on the outside, then it gets a lot different. But as of right now, based on what I've seen, this is kind of what I'm expecting to happen. For Dallas, Dalton Schultz, he's a start. Last week, he led the team in receiving yards. And at this point right now, he's still staying above Michael Gallup. So a lot of people might be worried that Michael Gallup is coming back. For me, Dalton Schultz has formed that great connection with Dak Prescott, and that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. For me, for Dalton Schultz, with Gallup back now, this just means we don't need to put him out at the slot anymore. So now we've got CeeDee Lamb and we've got Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup back on the outsides. We've got CeeDee Lamb back in the slot. Now we can move Dalton Schultz back onto the line, which is going to give him more mismatches with linebackers. So if anything, even if we lose a little bit of volume, the efficiency could get even better. New Orleans at Tennessee, and for Nolans right now at their tight end position, I'm going to go with Adam Troutman again this week. Tennessee is allowing over 15 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends, and Adam Troutman, I mentioned this in the waiver wire video, he's playing 82% of the offensive snaps right now. So he's out there on a constant basis, which is great to see. Now, have the performances really been there? No, they haven't. But with you being out on the field that much, with some of uncertainty at the quarterback position, with the wide receivers not doing a whole lot right now, that's just going to lead to more opportunity for Troutman, which I really like. On Tennessee's side, for Anthony Firkser, Jeff Swaim. Swaim, for me, is going to be a sit still. Now, he does have touchdowns in back-to-back games, but other than that, he hasn't really done anything. It's been just that one catch that has made kind of his fantasy day. New Orleans allows one of the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends, 9 points, which is 7th fewest in the league. So this is not a matchup that I want to bank on this week. Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and Dan Arnold is really going to be my only target in this game. Dan Arnold, right now, the Colts are allowing the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Arnold has the most targets on the Jacksonville team over the course of the last 2 weeks, and he's top 10 among tight ends in targets since week 5, his second week with Jacksonville. He is being utilized more and more often, and given this really, really good matchup, Dan Arnold could absolutely soar this week. For the Indianapolis Colts, Jack Mother and Doyle, Mo Cox, Mo Problems. Both of these guys, I mean, again, like, it's just not consistent enough. There's some matchups where it's like, oh, Mo could end up doing really, really well here, and Jack Mother and Doyle is the one that scores the touchdown. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason kind of to who's winning in this matchup and who's not. So for me, for Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox, I can't trust either of them right now. Cleveland at New England, and last week I had David Njoku as a sit, but if you listened, I was like, man, I feel like this could be David week. Like, I just felt like something could end up happening with David Njoku, and of course, he does end up scoring a touchdown. Hooper and Bryant aren't usable at this point. Neither of them are doing anything. David Njoku, he's a sit for me, but it just feels like, are they going to get him rolling in this offense a little bit more? Now that we have no OBJ, is there a possibility that we can get David Njoku on the field a little bit more? Can we get him in some more opportunities? I mean, I'd love it if they did, because he's a matchup nightmare. He's a monster on the field. They just haven't really utilized him. So I don't really know what their game plan is. Last week with no OBJ, obviously found him in the red zone, but if he's only going to be kind of good for a touchdown and we don't even know that every single week, I guess he a little bit more volume to start backing it up. And talking about volume, I mean, Hunter Henry, we've got him listed as a start again right now because he's scoring touchdowns, 4 out of the last 5 weeks. But that's really it. Like, the volume for him still is not coming either, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense given how poor the wide receiver play has been so far this season. So we're going to go back to Hunter Henry because he's been scoring touchdowns, but you're kind of risking it every week with him. Buffalo at the New York Jets, and Dawson Knox at this point, he didn't practice last week. Kind of waiting to see, is he going to get into practice and get back into a game anytime soon? Don't know yet. Keep an eye on it. Sweeney's not going to be a start for me, but if Knox ends up coming back, we'll start getting Knox obviously back into the rotation. Ryan Griffin, Tyler Kroft made the call on the touchdown last week with Ryan Griffin. Didn't have him listed as a start because I didn't know what was going on with some of the wide receivers at the time, but I did say that keep an eye on the tight end video. He could make his way into the top 20 based on the touchdown potential alone. He ended up scoring that touchdown. Still not enough for me. Tough matchup. Buffalo doesn't really let tight ends or really anybody do anything. Listing them as a sit again. Detroit at Pittsburgh, and another matchup with two really good tight ends. A lot of good tight end matchups on the schedule this week. With that being said, TJ Hockenson is a start after a rough 3 weeks. Like, he started off well, had a rough 3 weeks, and now he's back to it. 31 targets over the last 3 games. We just need him to get producing some more touchdowns. Like, if we can get back to touchdowns, he's a guy that kind of goes back up to that top 3, top 4 tight end mark. He's still tight end 4 on the season right now, though. So we're still holding him. We're still playing him. For Pittsburgh, Pat Freiermuth, I mean, since Juju Smith-Schuster went down with his injury, I have been telling all of you in the waiver wire video, pick this guy up. He was still under 50% owned before Monday Night Football. Now, at this point, he's going to go over 50% owned. We know that. After that huge performance, we had him as a start last week, nailed that. We're going back to him as a start. Kind of worried about the upside this week. Think it might be a little bit lower, especially if Pittsburgh gets out in front of Detroit and just rolls away with it. If that happens, we could end up seeing more Najee Harris. But for me, Pat Freiermuth, he's becoming a guy that can score every single week. Tampa Bay at Washington, and for Tampa Bay, Rob Gronkowski had a little bit of a setback, right? He tried to come back and play. They said probably shouldn't have pushed it so far. He hasn't practiced again since then. At this point of this recording, haven't heard on any plans for him practicing this week. So because of that, gonna list him as injured out, doubtful for right now, and we'll just have to continue to follow that up on that through the rest of the week. For Washington, we are following right now Logan Thomas. He could come back this week, but is it going to happen? That's part of the question. Right now for me, Ricky Seals-Jones will be a start because they've been utilizing the tight end position so much this year. Obviously, if Logan Thomas gets back to practicing and plays this week, we'll switch that up. Ricky Seals-Jones will go to a sit. Logan Thomas will be a start again. Carolina at Arizona. Not much to say about Carolina. I mean, their offense as a whole has been pretty bad recently. Not sure why we would even need to talk about the tight ends for them. And for Arizona, Zach Ertz will be a start, but really outside of one big play, he hasn't done anything since coming to Arizona. Now, to be fair, couple of games, obviously his first 2 games kind of working back into it. Last week didn't have Kyler Murray. This week though, what are we going to get from him? I tried to warn everybody about Zach Ertz that there was going to be some inconsistencies in his game because of everybody that they have there that can be playmakers. But we're going to be missing Chase Edmonds now, which could help out a little bit. We might see some Eno Benjamin get some targets. James Conner's probably not going to get a ton of targets. They're not going to want to run him into the ground. They're going to want to still keep some sort of a balance with him, even though he's going to be the starter for the next few weeks. And then obviously DeAndre Hopkins, is banged up right now. Is he going to get back this week? So there's ample opportunity for Zach Ertz, but is it going to happen? Until then, yes, he's going to be a start for me, but he's going to be a really inconsistent, probably low-end tight end 1 until some of that consistency with volume starts to show itself. Minnesota at the Los Angeles Chargers. And for Minnesota, Tyler Conklin, going back to him as a start, 14 targets the last 2 weeks combined, and they're starting to focus on him more and give him some more of those targets that used to go to Dalvin Cook, which obviously for Dalvin Cook, it hurts that upside. We're not sitting him or anything anytime soon, right? It does hurt a little bit of that upside, not getting that much, but I think it's better for him. Keep him healthy, keep him safe, still give him a few targets here or there, 3-4 targets a game. We don't need to be peppering him with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 targets a game. Let's give Tyler Conklin some of those. And they are starting to do that, which, again, I've mentioned this last couple of weeks. If you've watched this show for the last 2, maybe even 3 years, you've heard me for a while saying, Minnesota, utilize the tight end more. They haven't done it. Now they're starting to. For the Chargers, Jared Cook, Donald Parham, and I had to add Steven Anderson to this mix this week. Why? Because all 3 of these guys are basically splitting snaps right now. So Cook had 1 more route ran this past week than Donald Parham, but he had less than Steven Anderson. From a snap percentage, they're all basically on plane with snap percentages. Jared Cook Can't trust him right now. I know a lot of you out there are Jared Cooks fans. We've gone back and forth and talked about him in the comments a little bit this year. I've told some of you with all the targets that they have going to Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler, it's hard to trust him on a weekly basis. But now you're telling me he's got to share his snaps as well? That does not bode well for him the rest of the season. Philadelphia at Denver. Dallas Goedert, not a great week last week. Basically, everything went to Devontae Smith, all 17 passing attempts from Jalen Hurts. Still saw 6 targets, though, and the good thing about it was he averaged 14 yards per reception. So decent numbers, but he only caught 3 of those. So we're gonna, if we can get more towards 5 receptions a game, Dallas Goedert is gonna be like in that 80-yard mark, which 8-10 points for a tight end in this landscape it's par for the course, right? He's getting targets. He's really kind of the 1 or 2 right in here, kind of the 1 or 2 target on the team right now. Kenneth Gainwell, he's not getting any targets really. Boston Scott and Jordan Howard, neither of those guys are really like, hey, we're going to target them out of the backfield type of running backs. So Dallas Goedert is still going to be a really safe option. And for Denver, no Noah Fant and no Albert Are You Okay this week. Got to stay away from both of them. Not loving what I am seeing out of the direction of the Denver offense right now, where we're seeing Noah Fant and Albert Are You Okay splitting snaps. And then on top of that, Tim Patrick is really reinforcing himself as the number 3 target on this team. Some days the number 1 target too. But because of that, it's not leaving enough for Noah Fant and Albert Are You Okay? And I talked about it in the wide receiver start and sit video as well. Philadelphia allows the 3rd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, but they allow the 4th most to running back. Philly is going to get eaten alive by Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams this week. Seattle at Green Bay. Russell Wilson, are you going to be back, baby? Even if you are, it doesn't really matter for the tight ends. Aaron Rodgers, are you going to be back, baby? Even if you are, it doesn't really matter for the tight ends. Listen, there's nothing to talk about with these guys. Green Bay's moving to more forward wide receiver sets, and they're not having Mercedes Lewis on the field as much as they were with Bobby Tonyan, Gerald Everett, Will Dissly. They haven't really done anything all season. KC and LV and another great matchup with tight. It feels like all the really good tight ends are all playing each other this week. KC, Travis Kelce, lock him in, number 1 tight end. We're not moving him from there. Scored the touchdown last week. Las Vegas, good to see Darren Waller back. He's balling again. Had the targets, had the yards, had the receptions, had all of it. They're going to be focusing on Darren Waller even more with no Henry Ruggs. Deshaun Jackson is going to help stretch the field, though, when he comes in. We're rolling with both of these guys this week. The Rams at San Francisco. Tyler Higbee, he's going to be a sit. Boop. Not starting him this week. For San Francisco, George Kittle. He's looking like Kittle again. All right. Found out last week, like right before kickoff, George Kittle's going to be limited. He didn't look limited to me. Now, I didn't drop him outside my top 12 tight ends because I figured even with some limited snaps, he was still going to probably come back and be the number 1 target. And yes, he was. We're back to starting George Kittle confidently. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My tight end start and sit analysis for week 10 of the NFL season. Drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners. But more importantly, in the comments, let me know what is the matchup that you are most excited for. What matchup of these tight ends this week? Who are you looking forward to watch the most? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here, but I want you all to stay safe and stay healthy. And I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.